शामिल इस धरती की मिट्टी में, और सरशार है जज्बा और हिम्मत इस वतन की हर बस्ती में।
इस परचम का इस्तकलाल रहे कायम और जिंदाबाद,
आजाद रहे शाद रहे पाक जमी है ये दुआ, जानो दिल इस पर कुर्बान, शाद है ये पाकिस्तान, सबसे ऊंचा इसका नाम, शाद है ये पाकिस्तान, तेरी मेरी है एक पहचान, शाद है ये पाकिस्तान, गूंज रही है ये आवाज, शाद है ये।
Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Maqbool, and as you were watching earlier, of course, today is Pakistan Day and the entire nation has celebrated it with zeal and fervour. And as you can see, a wonderful parade was also witnessed today earlier. We know, of course, the 23rd March is a very important day for all Pakistanis. It is the day today where back in 1940 the Lahore Resolution was passed and paved the way for the creation of a separate homeland that we today call Pakistan. And of course, it's an important day in terms of Pakistan's progress and prosperity as well, along with the fact that a huge number of foreign dignitaries were also present in today's 23rd March parade, of course, because we are also having the 48th session of the Foreign Ministers Council of the OIC countries that has been taking place since yesterday, and a number of those dignitaries also witnessed the parade today, along with the Chinese Foreign Minister, who's also invited for this session. So, of course, today's 23rd March parade is of more importance and significance than ever before. We'll also be taking a look at the way the country is moving towards, which direction it's going towards in terms of its foreign policies, in terms of its relations with different countries, and as a whole, in terms of hosting this OIC summit, and with reference to a lot of the issues that are affecting not only Pakistan but the entire Muslim world, what really can be done with regards to the OIC's foreign ministers sitting together and discussing them, which of course includes a number of issues that we also looked at yesterday regarding Islamophobia, Afghanistan, of course, the Kashmir issue, and Palestine issue, and much other issues which are of course important for not only Pakistan but also for important regional players as well. And so today's discussion is going to center around the OIC 48th summit, and then of course the kind of issues that have been discussed and the way forward. What can we hope would be the outcome at the conclusion of the summit, and of course with reference to the 23rd March parade as well, and the importance of Pakistan Day. Where is Pakistan heading, and what do we see in terms of Pakistan's future, and how do we want its strategic role to be evolving in the coming days and years? This, of course, is our discussion on the debate today. With me, of course, is Raja Faisal and Farrukh Pitafi, as always. And we will be joined by our guests online as well. Before I introduce them, let me ask Farrukh how the parade was today, since he went and witnessed it today. And he's the only one among us who actually went today.
Right, Sana, it was really jubilant. And I don't exaggerate when I say that the crowd there was really electrified. Last year, I could not make it. So this time, despite my health issues, I made it a point that I will go there. And I was there. And honestly, the way the foreign dignitaries were there, and then, of course, there was a representation in the parade of the foreign forces as well. Uzbekistan and other, Bahrain also were represented, and so was Saudi Arabia. So I think the way people cheered for these participants, and of course 46 dignitaries were there, 57 countries that are participating. That actually proves that India's propaganda that they are going to isolate Pakistan is backfiring, because this time India's Republic Day was hollow. There wasn't any foreign representation at all. But Pakistan, mashallah, is not alone. It is really accompanied by all brethren, including China. So that is a great news. And the event was beautiful, especially because I'm father of two girls, and I saw that there were contingent of girls and women also. So that was also a time when that actually march came on. There was standing ovation for the daughters of this country. So that was also very heartening.
Absolutely, and it's a proud moment for all of us. Let me also welcome in the debate our guests who have joined us online. We've been joined by Farshid Bagheria, who's an Iranian West Asia Research Center, and we've also been joined by Mr. Javed Hussain, who's a former ambassador. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being with us today. I'll start with you, Mr. Javed. When we talk about the Pakistan Day, of course, and the 23rd March parade, and as Farrukh was talking about in terms of the mere presence of so many dignitaries at the parade, it goes to show that Pakistan has evolved in its relationship with different countries and has emerged as an important strategic player. How would you see this development with reference to Pakistan, first of all, hosting in a short span of time again the OIC Foreign Ministers Summit, and then, of course, also having them witness this important day today?
Well, the fact that Pakistan hosted the 48th session of the OIC Council of Foreign Ministers meeting in Islamabad, coinciding with Pakistan Day, I think was a major success for Pakistan's foreign policy. And it showed that the whole Islamic world stood united together with Pakistan in dealing with international and regional issues and security and economic issues of concern to all of them. And also it showed that Pakistan enjoyed the support of these countries together with China in coming to grips with the challenges of the modern times, of the present time. These are so this was I think a very welcome development from the point of view of Pakistan. The Prime Minister Imran Khan made a very important speech in which he highlighted matters of common concern for the Islamic Ummah, and especially Kashmir and Palestinian issues, which need not only the attention of the Islamic world, but also the whole international community for their just and honorable and resolution in accordance with the UN resolutions. And side by side, he also drew attention of the participants of the conference to the need for stability, political stability, and economic stabilization of the situation in Afghanistan, which badly needs humanitarian and economic assistance. And in this connection, it was a welcome development that on Monday, which means just 2 days ago, the trust fund, the humanitarian trust fund on Afghanistan, was activated through the signing of an agreement between OIC, signed by the OIC Secretary General and the President of the Islamic Development Bank. So this was another, I think, major development which coincided with the holding of the 40th session of the OIC Council of Foreign Ministers in Pakistan. Needless to say that the conference itself enabled all the delegations, all the member states to exchange views on issues of deep concern to the Islamic Ummah. And I haven't yet gone through the declaration, which is likely to be issued today, but I have no doubt that it will reiterate the concern of the Islamic Ummah, of the Islamic countries on such issues as Kashmir and Palestine.
And the aspect regarding the trust fund is an important one, and we'll discuss that in further detail as we move on. But Mr. Farshid, when we talk about the OIC summit in general and the kind of issues that it deliberated upon, of course, we are hoping that a strong statement comes out, something conclusive actually comes out of this 2-day summit, where we can actually see at least a direction towards which the OIC countries can move in terms of actually helping and alleviate the suffering of the people who are in perhaps conflict zones such as Kashmir and Palestine. Are we going to expect that at the conclusion of the summit? And if so, how much of a significance does it hold in terms of actually binding the people, the OIC countries, and actually following through? Will there be any sort of accountability from the OIC?
Okay. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me, and I congratulate National Pakistani Day. And again, I thank Pakistani people and Pakistani government that established such huge event that is very remarkable event for Islamic world. The fact is, I can see that in the top of your TV, you put the unity, mark unity. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. It is one of the
Okay.
themes. Yes.
Yeah, you put the unity and faith on the top of your TV, and this is a very
Right.
pretty well word. But the fact is, the member of the OIC is somehow look at each other as a national security threat somehow. So first of all, we have to change our look of view, the way we look and the way we be looked. This is the important thing. For example, to come down to a resolution regarding the Kashmir, regarding the Palestine, we need unity, not only on the putting on the TV or as a statement or some resolution. And we have to change radically. And the crucial factor of this, a unity. Radically, we change the point of view to the neighbors, because according to the Islamic education, neighbor is very important. Somehow, neighbor can enjoy from the heritage. So this is the fact. Neighbor in Islamic education, there is no border. So all of us, 1.5 billion people, we are neighbors and we are living together. So the fact is, first of all, we have to calm down to the concept of the unity. This is the fact. And after that, definitely we can solve this Palestinian problem, we can solve the Kashmir problem, many other problems. And we have to finish the national
That's a very interesting point, Mr. Bagherian. But let me ask you another thing. You stressed upon the need for unity, and I understand that it might be the need of the hour. But is it not true that we keep on asking for the impossible? Because after all, OIC, like the UN, is an international body, and in every international body, wherever there are nation states, they are bound to have their national interest, and that's why usually at the UN also, or their General Assembly, we see voting that takes place. So majority actually walks away with the consensus rather than demanding total and absolute unity.
Okay, first of all, let's look down to the nationalism, ethno-nationalism or nationalism. There is some conflict with the nationalism and Islamic education. This is the fact. For example, right now in the Ukraine, this is the clash of nationalism and ethno-nationalism. So first of all, we are human, all 1.5 billion people, we are human, first of all. And after that, we are many things in common. But this many things in common is only just evaluated during these such summits. And after that, we will forget all these things, first of all. Second, for coming down to the concept, the real concept, and the real concept of the unity and the nationalism, we have to produce a way to compromising the nationalism and the education of Islam together. This is the fact. And how can I explain? Our experts and our teachers must do that, because we are people. We are ordinary people. We cannot act on the contrary of the government that do. So this is a fact. The government must come down to the concept of this unity and the nationalism and the education of Islam. And the second thing is, right now, the time is the right time, believe me, because Mr. Joe Biden gave a very big favor, to Islamic community, that instead of Islamophobia, he produced or rendered maybe Islamophobia to Russiophobia, for example. And this is the right now, because right now, nobody talk about the extremism of Islamic communities or maybe some groups. Everybody right now talk about the Russian extremism. So this is the fact. This is the right time. We have to catch it. Yeah.
Ambassador Javed, sir, if we look at the comments, obviously from our colleague from Iran, Farshid, he is right about it, that first of all we need to look into our internal unity. And if we look at Prime Minister Imran Khan's addresser, he highlighted it as well, that we could not produce significant kind of impact from OIC. The only reason behind it is that there are countries having conflicts going on, obviously, within themselves, and the unity is the premier aspect that OIC need to achieve. Would you agree that, of course, Prime Minister was trying to highlight his sort of efforts? He's been trying to bring both Saudi Arabia and Iran together on the talks table so that they can talk peace rather than going for a continuous proxy in Yemen. Is it the case, or there are other cases as well?
Well, as an ideal, there cannot be two opinions about the need for unity within the Islamic world. I think in principle, there can't be any difference of opinion. We need unity. We must make all possible efforts to have unity of purpose, unity of thought, and unity of action within the Islamic world, to have united so that our collective voice is more effectively heard in the international community. But the reality is that these Islamic countries spread from Morocco to Indonesia have different points of view, different interests on important international issues. And the forums like OIC, the OIC provides them an important forum to exchange views, to narrow down their differences, to harmonize their thinking, and to reach some common platform, to common line of action on important issues. Now, this is going to be inevitably a process. It cannot be an event. For instance, we have had now so far 48 sessions of the Islamic Conference of Foreign Ministers. OIC for Council of Foreign Ministers meetings, 48 sessions. Each session has made some headway in harmonizing the views and actions and policies of the Islamic countries, and we must continue this effort. But I think it would be too unrealistic to expect that one session or one more session will suddenly will usher in an era of total unity within the Islamic world. Even within the countries, our countries, there are differences. There are different political parties. There are different groups. So how can we expect total unity or single line of thought?
Here's another thing. Sir, with due respect, here's another very important question regarding how we approach OIC and its performance. We keep on talking about UN as well, and how the UN, or particularly UNSC, ends up in some kind of tie, or fails to do something about political issues. Particularly, we have seen in Ukraine, we have seen in umpteen other places wherever veto powers are not on the same page. But there's another story about the UN as well, that its development institutions, its World Health Organization, and many other bodies actually do stellar work. So is it not important to remember that instead of putting OIC or making OIC a hostage to political interests or political issues, we can actually develop consensus on basic issues like education, healthcare, and uplift of the common people, sir? Ambassador sir.
Yeah, I think you are totally right, and therefore, if you have a look at the activities of the OIC, you will see that they are focused on not only just political and security issues, but also on economic and commercial issues, on educational and cultural issues. There are three high-level committees: COMSTEC, which deals with science and technology, headed by the President of Pakistan; COMSEC, which deals with commercial and economic issues, headed by the President of Turkey; and then there is COMIEC, that deals with information and cultural issues, headed by the President of Senegal; then Al-Quds Committee, which is headed by the King of Morocco. So they are focused on different aspects of national activities and international and regional cooperation. What you are saying is entirely true, that we must redouble or maybe strengthen cooperation within the Islamic world, among the Islamic countries, in economic issues, in commercial issues. We should try to lower trade barriers. We should encourage mutual trade. There are countries within the Islamic world which have surplus capital, which can be invested in. Those are countries which lack capital, and similarly there are countries which have got surplus, I would say, labor, which can be put to good use in countries which lack.
That is a very valid point, Ambassador Saab. When we talk about earlier, Mr. Farshid, you were talking about unity, and understand it's important in terms of moral values or principles that we should all aspire towards. But at the end of the day, when we're talking about countries and of course part of bodies such as the OIC, and when we're dealing with issues which are far bigger than just individual countries, then perhaps we need to aim towards more than just principles and moral values, because they may not result in action as perhaps the economic or trade relations, as earlier Ambassador Saab was talking about. Something you said before also interests me when you talked about nationalism being aligned with Islam and being and sort of being brought into individual countries so as to pave way for unity. How exactly do you recommend that should happen in terms of actually fostering unity, or in terms of actually understanding both Islam and nationalism? Because when we talk about issues such as Islamophobia, we also boil it down to how we understand it and its definitions. Again, issues such as Islam and nationalism are also quite broad and varied in all of the OIC countries.
Okay, thank you. So some negative issues can unify us. For example, the crucial factor right now in our region, because we are destined to live here, 1.5 billion Muslim with a huge amount of resources, natural resources. We are destined to live here. The crucial factor right now is hunger. Because after the Ukraine crisis, the hunger is spread over all the Islamic states. And first of all, we have hunger in common. So we have first of all solved this problem with the unity, with one attack regard to producing food, especially halal food. So the fact is, sometimes the negative issues can unify all the Islam world and all the communities, and we have to enjoy from such kind of the negative issues. And second, that friend said regarding education, and another crucial factor is education, because the lack of education, the lack of make poverty, make abuses of foodstuff and resources, strategic foodstuff and resources are being abused. This is the fact with education and a new way of life. For example, I'm not talking about the American La Bombon life. We are talking about the Islamic type of life. We can render this region to paradise. I'm telling you, the clash of nationalism and Islamic is not a huge clash, because the way you look to this nationalism, maybe we can drive it to the clash. But otherwise, for example, we have in Afghanistan, we have the clash of ethnic clashes. They are all Muslim, but they have ethnic clashes over there. So first of all, we have to solve these problems. First, hunger, because when we have some educational phrases in Islam that's told that a hungry person has no namaz, salat, and this is very important thing. And this can be the policy for giving welfare to the region and uprising the
I understand
food
your
and
point,
the.
Mr. Rashid, but Ambassador Saab, what we were discussing before, I understand also that perhaps going towards principles such as unity is something which is very ambitious, and we can target other goals. But are those goals, such as alleviating hunger or poverty, as Mr. Rashid is talking about, really as simple as we're making it seem? Because if they were, wouldn't we have solved them somehow, or would have done something about it right now? Even issues such as those have existed for such a long time. OIC has existed for such a long time, but really there hasn't really been any tangible action coming from those bodies.
And one supplement to this, regarding hunger particularly, we keep on talking about our own region or perhaps Middle East, but what is going on in sub-Saharan Africa is really frightening. And similarly, in Yemen and also in Afghanistan, the situation might be worsening. So usually when we look at data or information on hunger or food crisis in these countries or healthcare, we end up looking at data that comes from the UN. I don't see any similar data coming from Muslim countries, or particularly this body. Do you think that there should be a robust mechanism to take care of this research as well?
I think you are right. There is a lot that can be done and should be done by the OIC and within the framework of OIC. As far as development is concerned, obviously, first of all, there has to be an effort at national level within the countries, within the member states, to develop themselves economically, for which there are several prerequisites, and I think education or development of science and technology and investment in human and material sectors, social and economic sectors, are important conditions for accelerating economic development and economic progress. Now, first of all, an effort has got to be made at the national level. Second level is that within the framework of OIC, there has to be common plans of action as to how the organization can promote cooperation among the OIC countries so that it is a mutually beneficial kind of process in which uh, trade can be promoted, economic investment can flow from within the Islamic world from relatively richer countries to those countries which need more capital to be invested. So these are things which are not new, which need action, but unfortunately, the action within the framework of OIC has not been as effective and strong as it should have been. So, and there is, of course, other deficiencies like data collection, dissemination of information. And what you see is now that these Council of Ministers CFM meetings take place annually from country to country. People come, they adopt resolutions, they adopt declarations, and then unfortunately it appears to the common man as if everything is forgotten till the next meeting. And then the same resolutions are
And this makes me want to
reiterated,
question, Ambassador
readopted, and
Saab, the importance that the OIC actually holds for its individual countries and its members. How do they even look at this body and perceive it? Is there any sort of consequence for the kind of resolutions or discussions that are made at the OIC body if they're not followed through? Is there any accountability, or is it just mere representation for the countries who are sitting at the table?
What happens is once the resolutions are adopted by let us say this 48th session, then it is the responsibility of the OIC Secretariat General in Jeddah to pursue their implementation. But at the end of the day, the implementation has to be done by the member states. If the member states themselves are not serious, as the Prime Minister himself pointed out, that for instance, on the political issues, we have adopted resolution after resolution at every session without making any headway or real progress in resolution of those political and security issues which were of deep concern to the Islamic world. The same is true about economic and commercial issues that are very, very important, or scientific and technological development. The fact is that Muslim countries themselves, at the as countries, they are lagging behind in the race for development within the world. Look at the world at the speed at which it is moving ahead. How many countries within the Islamic world can be considered highly developed? I can't mention even one single name. Even countries which are relatively prosperous in terms of development means in terms of education, in terms of science and technology, in terms of GDP, in terms of trade, they are
Right.
lagging far,
All right.
far behind
Faisal, let me just come to Farrukh on the same issue as well, and we'll come back to you. Farrukh, does this mean what Ambassador Saab was saying, that if in fact at the end of the day the responsibility lies on the individual country, then doesn't it make the resolutions redundant in terms of not really having a consequence or not really ensuring their fulfillment?
Right, and that is a very good point, actually, a very good question and very good answer. But here's the thing. Whenever somebody wants to be relevant, what does it do? It makes itself trustworthy, right? There's an example, UN. Every country seems to have some problem with the UN or the way UN's bodies actually work. But still they continue to work with them and try to cooperate. Why? When there's coronavirus, WHO is there to help you out. That means that there is an automatic mechanism to help you out, right? Similarly, when you talk about a food crisis, FAO and other bodies step in. So first of all, the OIC will have to make itself robust, that it is reliable enough that tomorrow, if God forbid Afghanistan has some kind of situation regarding food, regarding health, regarding economic issues, then OIC automatically steps in, rather than what we have seen that it took us 4 months to create and then activate a trust fund, right? And then when you later move on in the program, Sana, I will request you to ask other participants also, can we do something about the name of OIC as well? Because we have changed it already. C used to stand for conferences, now it is for cooperation. But can't it be ICO or something else rather than OIC?
Right, and I'll do that, Farrukh, but I have a follow-up question to what you just said also. The kind of issues that you pointed out were devoid of any political issues or conflicts. What about issues like Kashmir or Palestine? So does that mean that the OIC is really not going to step up in those situations?
No, my problem is UN has actually outlasted, and it has been there before OIC, right? But even that hasn't been able to bring a closure to many of these issues. That doesn't mean that it doesn't do a great work in other spheres. For example, regarding coronavirus, WHO and other bodies associated with have really done a lot of great work regarding vaccination and everything, right?
Right.
It is important for OIC to fully develop. For 48 meetings, what we see is many parts of the organization are still not properly functional. For example, when you talk about healthcare, is there a body or a part of it that is relevant there regarding food as well? So you'll have to someday invest in those areas as well, so that it becomes an autonomous body like the UN.
Okay.
And then you can actually
So
work
again,
with
our
it.
expectation should be towards humanitarian aspects and
Yeah,
perhaps not
start
political
easy,
ones.
right?
Okay.
Start with baby steps, and
All
then
right.
you can build on it.
Now
Okay,
I'll
yes,
go
yes.
towards now I'll go towards Mr. Brigadian. I just wanted to ask Mr. Brigadian, because if we once again take the Prime Minister Imran Khan's speech, he did highlight the unity aspect, and then he did highlight the justice aspect as well. For both, I must say, obviously when it comes to justice, Iran always stood by Pakistan when it comes to Kashmir, and it obviously is highlighted by Pakistan time and again. But if we take the very current example of Islamophobia is not only taking place in the West, but in India as well. And there are jurisdictions coming out of the courts, their higher courts, against the Muslim way of life. And this is utmost Islamophobia right now going on. But at the same time, I just wanted to ask, if Iran is selling crude oil constantly to India, is there a sort of a way in which Muslim countries like Iran, that has very good economic relations with India, they can pressurize India to shun these practices of Islamophobia?
India has a historical tie. And after that, let me tell you something. Let's gonna be honest. More than 50% of the Islamic countries are under sanction. Maybe more than 70% are under sanction. So Iran is one of the huge sanctions done before the Russia by West. Iran is trying to sell its crude oil for daily life. I'm telling you, for daily life, nothing else. So the fact is, right now, India, after hiring the Chabahar port, is one of our trade partners as well. But it's not meaning of Iran will completely accept our Indian policy. And this is another thing, because we are not we is a trade partner. They're just like that, because China is also our trade partner. But in the Xinjiang province of China, a new American sanction regarding the child-made products. Sometimes something is very confused. United States in Rohingya is applying any sanction because of the Muslims and China, but regarding the Iran is acting different. So this is the fact. Please see India as Iranian historical tie, and right now under the sanction as a trade partner, nothing else. Please.
All right, Stazab, I want to come back to the trust fund that earlier you talked about, in terms of something that the OIC has actually gotten together and done with reference to humanitarian crisis. It is a good achievement, and it's a good start towards actually helping the people of Afghanistan. I want to know if there is any sort of precedence of such an act from the OIC coming before, whether or not they've actually gotten together and done something for a country and its humanitarian crisis, and if this is something that can actually be successful in terms of helping the people of Afghanistan, can perhaps such a mechanism also evolve to help other Muslim countries in terms of economic need and crisis?
Well, to the best of my knowledge, the Humanitarian Trust Fund on Afghanistan is the first of its kind, that has been established by OIC. But there is no difficulty, or there should not be any objection to creating similar funds for meeting other economic, emergencies in other countries, or even a general kind of body can be established by OIC to undertake emergency humanitarian tasks when such emergencies arise in the member states. This is something that OIC needs to look into and come to some agreement. This is not going to be easy because, as Mr. Bagherian has just mentioned, indirectly, I think, and while dealing with the Iran and India relations, and I served as Pakistan ambassador to Iran for about 6 years, so I know Iran's policies. It is natural that different countries will look at the same issue from different points of view, keeping in view their own national interests and national compulsions and national policies. So we have to be therefore realistic. We cannot expect the maximum results from our just idealism because Pakistan, for instance, itself has some limitations in terms of supporting other countries, Muslim countries, which are faced with difficult issues. On the Palestine issue, we have been very, very forthright, but not all Muslim countries have the same views. We have seen recently UAE and some other countries have signed agreements with Israel and recognize it and are having regular official exchanges. Pakistan doesn't belong to that group, and we are maintaining our support for the Palestinian cause. So what is important is, first of all, member states of OIC must put their houses in order, number one. Number two, they should continue their exchanges, their dialogue through the Council of Foreign Ministers meeting or meetings at the summit levels and at the technical levels to coordinate their policies as much as possible. And this will be a slow process inevitably. You cannot expect that in one session or in a few years' time, everything will become perfect and that we will be we'll have the total points of view. Because even within a country, we know that even within our own countries, in Pakistan, in Iran, and in other countries, there are different political parties, there are different points of view. We can't agree on have total agreement on political and economic issues. Even
Absolutely,
within
I
the country,
understand
how
it is
can
a process. It is a process, and we need the will as well to be there for that process to actually start and continue. Earlier, Farrukh was talking about changing the name, but what about also revising the frameworks and strategies and procedures of the OIC, or in terms of actually strengthening and structures towards more accountability, ensuring that perhaps even in issues such as humanitarian crisis, the OIC actually is able to step up and provide some sort of support in a crisis situation. Mr. Farshid, is that something that the OIC countries are willing to look into?
Well, they are, because as I told you in my last words, that 70% of these countries are under sanction, and they are trying to find a breakthrough for get rid of these sanctions. The fact is, I'm completely agree with Mr. Ambassador that the lack of dialogue between these countries is a huge problem. Because we have no dialogue. When you have no dialogue, you don't know what about the issues and the dilemmas. So the fact is, we have capitals, we have natural resources, we have human. Any kind of human, educated or not educated, labored, and everything. So we have everything. But the fact is, there is no dialogue, and the U.S. or maybe the West is enjoying from the lackage of this dialogue. We have to produce dialogue. Yeah.
All right. Ambassador Saab, another issue that, of course, is important with reference to when we're talking about the OIC session being held is, of course, the evolving situation in the world and the Ukrainian crisis as well, something that was also talked about by Prime Minister Imran Khan as well. What can the OIC really do in this regard?
Well, the Prime Minister expressed the hope that OIC somehow should be able to mediate between the West and Russia on the Ukrainian issue. Now, this is, of course, ideally something which nobody can sort of reject that kind of an idea. The only thing is we have to see how practical it is and how effective OIC can be. I think for the time being, I would suggest, or I would present the point of view that for the time being, OIC should concentrate on resolving its own issues, on promoting cooperation within the Islamic world. When we, our own countries, member states, are at loggerheads with each other, have serious conflicts or serious tensions, serious disputes, how can we expect that they will be able to promote cooperation among them? We have to be realistic. Look at the Middle East. There are serious differences between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Now, that is a reality, not that we would like to see it, but that is a reality. Now, first of all, we should try to mediate in terms of ameliorating, improving relations between Iran and Saudi Arabia and Iran and some other countries on the other side of the Persian Gulf before we start mediating in the Ukrainian crisis. I mean, we have to have our priorities right. So I would suggest that if we want to be active, we should be more active in resolving disputes within the Islamic world and with focus on promoting cooperation among the Islamic countries before jumping into more difficult issues,
Absolutely,
which
Ambassador
are
Saab, as they say, charity begins at home. So perhaps it is high time that we first resolve internal disputes. But let me, with your permission, Sana, go to Dr. Bagherian, who is actually holds a PhD in political thought. And earlier, sir, you were talking about the need for unity. It actually brought me back to one very interesting aspect about the evolution of political thought in Muslim countries, especially since last time religion was interpreted and there was a comprehensive ijtihad. At that time, the only political model that was there was essentially empires. There was no concept of nation states back then. And now it seems that somehow whenever we meet, we want to mentally at least go back to that time and build an empire rather than have a collective of nation states like the UN. Don't you think that there needs to be some kind of reconciliation with the idea of nation states as it is for us to move forward?
The process of nation state in many countries is not done already. Many countries there is no need to name that. But before nation state, we have Islamic education law. For example, we have the concept for human. What is human? What is a human individual in Islamic education? So that's the fact. If we can put some, how can I explain, etiquette, not characterizing this concept, we can use it as what is seen right now. You can solve the problem of human, individual in this Islamic world. The community is the problem, is the concept of human. And after that, for example, look at our region, human trafficking, sex crime, child abuse, drug, and all of kind of crime is done by our in this region, and the West is emboldening this. And why Islamophobia? What is Islamophobia? This is what we are suffering from. That is the Islamophobia, and they're just a ticket for us, not a sticker, not anything else. We are suffering because we're doing that. First of all, we need an army. We need a unity. We need maybe armored unity or a brigade to prevent such crimes in our region. And after that, we will change the image of the individual.
Are we not once again doing exactly the same thing by building the argument for a united army, and that means a state? Because I say this for a very simple reason. Iran, your country, is a ferociously independent country with history of centuries, right? Actually millennia. My country might be a nation, but it is ferociously independent as well. Why would it give up its independence to become a willing part of an empire at this moment? It is unrealistic, is it not?
We are not talking about the borders, we are talking about the population. Because borders, maybe we have new borders, but population is a historical thing. Can I say what I mean?
All right, I'll come back to Ambassador Saab because we're almost at the end of our show as well. Ambassador Saab, when we talk about this session, this is important for Pakistan, obviously, to initiate and host it. But at best, what are we hoping to be the outcome of this session?
Well, we hope that this session, which was held in Islamabad, would help resolve political issues which are confronting the Islamic world, both internally and also in terms of its relationship with the rest of the world, would help in promoting economic and commercial cooperation among the Islamic countries or Muslim countries, and also help accelerate development of science and technology in these countries. Because the fundamental reason why we are the Islamic Ummah or the Islamic world or the Muslim countries are lagging far behind the rest of the world is because they lack knowledge, they lack science and technology, in which the Western countries or the advanced countries are centuries ahead of us. And therefore, unless we develop, we acquire education, acquire knowledge, acquire science and technology, our future will remain not very bright. But of course, what we need simultaneously, it is not something that you just need to do one thing. Together with these promotion of cooperation in economic and science and technology, we need to also resolve our political differences so that instead of fighting amongst ourselves, or not fighting, maybe that is too strong a word, but instead of having disputes amongst ourselves, we have a common purpose. Look at what has happened in Europe. Till the Second World War, for the last several centuries, European countries had been fighting amongst themselves until they came to the conclusion that instead of fighting, if they start having regional cooperation, and which they have been able to develop in this form of European Union, they will be much better off. And look, with the establishment of this organization, Europe, Western Europe has, and also Eastern Europe, which has joined EU now, has moved so far ahead in terms of development, in terms of trade, in terms of prosperity, and that is a model for the rest of the world to follow. Similarly, Islamic countries can also develop some mechanism for promoting, to begin with, cooperation at regional levels, and then joining hands to promote cooperation at the level of the Muslim world.
Right. Thank you so much, Ambassador Saab, for being with us. And thank you very much, Mr. Farrukh also for joining us today and being a part of the discussion in the debate. Yes, sir.
Very, very quickly, since Ambassador Saab was talking about the need for education, right? And that is very important. Remember yesterday I mentioned Arab Development Report that came out after 9/11, and it spoke about three deficits: knowledge, freedom, and women empowerment. Just to stress this point regarding education or knowledge, remember they made a comparison. They said the entirety of Muslim countries, all the universities produce less research papers per annum than Israel, a small country in the middle of nowhere. Right?
Absolutely.
So that should worry us all.
Absolutely. We'll continue the discussion in the next hour as well. We're going to take a small break and be back with you and continue our discussion on what the OIC session is going to result not only for Pakistan but the region as well. Stay tuned.